Hey guys, my name is Matsumo, and welcome to our episode of Sunday Mailbox. This is a video series where you, the viewer, can submit your gaming-related questions, and then I will give my humble opinion on them. To get the formalities out of the way real quick, if you would like to submit your own question that could be featured in an upcoming episode, you can do so by leaving a comment down below, or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. The first question for today comes from Clayton, and it is, on the Rainbow Six Siege AMA, they talked about how Echo currently doesn't fit the role they originally intended for him, and is underwhelming. What do you think about a buff where when he hits someone with his drone, it automatically marks them again 5 seconds later? I also saw that, and I was kind of surprised by their response. Ubisoft basically stated that their design for Echo was that they wanted him to be an anchor, which he absolutely is. I'd say they nailed that portion, but they also wanted him to be active throughout the entire match. That last part doesn't really happen right now. If you guys play Echo, you know that his role right now is basically to find a corner, sit in said corner, and then use his drone the entire match, either to gather information, maybe slow down the enemy's progress every once in a while, but his real purpose is to wait until the very last seconds of the match, wait for the enemy to try to plant the diffuser, and then disorient them. If he's able to disorient them, and it's only like a 1v1, he pretty much guarantees his team a win. That's kind of the design of Echo right now, or at least that's the way that he functions. And so what it sounds like to me is that they're just not happy with that design. They don't want an operator just to sit in the camera the entire match. They want him to interact with everything that's going on around him, and that's just not the way that people play Echo, and so they're going to be making some changes to him in the future. The question is, though, how are they going to go about changing him? Your suggestion is an interesting one. Not only does it fit the theme of Echo, or at least his name, I'm assuming Echo stands for echolocation, being able to figure out what's going on around you, and so if you do use your gadget against someone, you disorient them, maybe the added benefit is that they will also be spotted kind of like Jackal's gadget for a couple of seconds, so it pinpoints where they're heading. Now, the reason why I don't think that they're going to go with this suggestion is that it goes against everything that we just talked about. Ubisoft is trying to get Echoes to get out of their drone and be interactive the entire match. And so if you're able to not only disorient someone with his drone, but also spot them for your team and it continuously updates for them, like, why would you ever want to leave your drone? Like, that just sounds even better than the current system that we have right now, and so they're gonna hide even more than they used to. One thing I find really interesting about this discussion is that we have Valkyrie in the game, who is very similar in design with Echo, but she doesn't seem to share these same problems. Yes, she's going to be in her cameras a lot of the time, but she's not in her cameras the entire match. She's honestly one of the more aggressive operators in the game. Why is there this big difference between these two operators? Well, I think one of the most obvious reasons is that she's 2 armor, 2 speed. One small issue I've always had with Echo is that because he is 3 armor, it just takes him a long time to get places. Not only is he going to make a lot of noise so the enemy knows that he's coming, but the information that I gathered through my camera is now irrelevant just because it took me that long to get to the action. And so I think one way they could make him more interactive in a match is just by simply making him 2 armor, 2 speed. Now, will Ubisoft do this? Probably not. They've stated that they want him to be an anchor, so they probably want him to continue to be a 3 armor, and if he did go 2 armor, 2 speed, well, I think he would do just fine on the objective. He can still anchor and be successful. He would no longer have access to the ACOG scope, which I don't know if that is something that people want. Ubisoft has stated that only 3 armors from here on out are going to have ACOGs, and so that also would be a drawback of changing him to 2 armor, 2 speed. The other way I think they could make him more interactive is allow his teammates access to his camera. A lot of the times, the reason why I feel like it's mandatory for me to sit in that thing the entire match is because no one else can use it. In a 1v1 situation, a lot of times it's really frustrating as Echo, where it's like, I wish my teammates could see what's going on through that camera so they could give me callouts. They can never make those callouts. And so if I'm the only one with eyes in the room, I'm the only one that knows what's going on with the enemy, of course I'm going to sit in my camera the entire time. If one of my teammates that got taken out at the start of the round could also relay that information, not use his gadget, we don't want them to be able to disorient the enemy, but at least see what's going on, I think that that would be a huge change to Echo and make him a lot more versatile. That's one of the things I think why Valkyrie is allowed to be more interactive. She doesn't need to be the only one that can see through her cameras. Everyone can use her cameras, which allows her the freedom to move around the map. And so all in all, while I realize that this was a very long-winded response to your question, I was just really surprised that Ubisoft was unhappy with Echo. I never thought that he was terrible. I never thought that he was the best operator in the game, but it just caught me by surprise that they were unhappy with his design, and so I'm really curious to see how they're going to be changing him into the future. The next question is, do you think that Dokebi's MK14 needs a nerf? So I've been hearing a lot of complaints about Dokebi's DMR because while I do agree with you, it's incredible. It's got 20 rounds in a mag, it's laser beam-like accurate, it has very little recoil, like this thing is a monster. And if you compare it to the other DMRs, I don't think they compete at all. Like it really is that good. Now, does that mean that it needs a nerf? I don't know if I would necessarily agree with that. You have to remember that weapon balance isn't in little bubbles. If every operator could only use DMRs, then yeah, I'd say that I would agree with you and that it should get toned down. But it needs to compete with all the other amazing weapons in the game. She only has access to a DMR and a shotgun as her primary. She can't fall back on a full auto like Twitch or Blackbeard can. Now, you could argue that her secondaries kind of make up for that, and that would be a fair counter argument, but I don't necessarily think that that means that her DMR is too good then. That means that her secondary weapons kind of make up for that little bit of a weakness. Whenever I lose a firefight against her, I never think to myself, wow, I lost that firefight because of her DMR. That thing's overpowered. It requires a bit of finesse, it requires a bit of skill, and while it is very good, I don't think it's any better than some of the other amazing weapons in the game, like the R4C for Ashe or Twitch's FAMAS. And so I think if you look at it from that point of view, it's relatively well balanced. Now, of course, I might change my opinion in the future. Maybe I just haven't gone against a lot of Dokebi players that are incredible, and then when I do, I'll realize, yeah, this thing is nuts and it does need some tuning. But compared to all the other weapons that we have in the game, I think that it is in a good place. The next question is, what do you think about the new throwing mechanic in Siege? Do you like it or rather have it the way that it was? Well, I don't necessarily think that the new throwing mechanics are a bad thing. It's just kind of different and something that we're going to have to get used to. I believe the reason why Ubisoft has made this change is that they're trying to resolve the problem where if you throw an object out of a window or if you're just trying to throw it through like a barricade, sometimes it will get stuck, but it won't let you know that it got stuck. I'm sure you guys have seen videos, or maybe it's happened to you, where you throw C4 out of a window, it looks like it sailed on through, you activate the gadget because you lined it up perfectly, you know you're gonna get that nice multi, and then it rubber bands right at your feet and you take yourself out. Now, admittedly, this doesn't happen very often, but when it does, it's incredibly frustrating, and some could even argue that it's game breaking. I mean, I know I've taken out a couple teammates that way on accident. It's no fault of my own, it's no fault of my teammates, but when it does, it loses rounds, and you could argue that that absolutely is game breaking. And so, while I don't know if this has solved that problem, if it has, I think it's going to be for the better. I will say that it is a bit annoying having to relearn to throw objects to the exact spot that you want because it is slightly different. I remember playing as Valkyrie, I was throwing a camera in a position where I normally have no problem reaching, and it got nowhere near close to that spot. And so now I'm going to have to approach that differently in the future. So I'm going to have to relearn Valkyrie, at least on some of these maps. Not something insurmountable, but if you've been playing a lot of Valkyrie, having to relearn that could be kind of tedious. The next question is, when do you think Ubisoft will add back Favela and Yacht, if at all, being that there is nothing on the patch notes and on the TTS? So once again, to my surprise, they stated in their AMA that Yacht and Favela may never come back to ranked at all. It's looking very unlikely, and they're not sure if it even they'll bring them back to casual. Now, at least for me, this is pretty disappointing. I know a lot of people didn't like Yacht and Favela, and for the most part, they weren't my favorite maps, but especially Favela, it could be fun. Like, the amount of destruction, the chaos that could ensue, like, at least it was a somewhat interesting map. And so I figured that they were gonna go on in. I mean, they've even talked about how they're gonna be reworking old maps, but it doesn't seem like they're reworking Yacht and Favela, at least according to this response. It sounds like they just brought them out of the rotation for whatever reason, and they're not making any changes. That's kind of disappointing. And so the question I now have is what map are they going to be reworking for the next season? They've stated that because they're going to 2 maps and they're going to be reworking an old one, I figured that one of them would have been Yacht or Favela, or they were already working on Yacht and Favela this entire time, and they were going to be working another map. If it's not those two, which one is it gonna be? And so, yeah, I think you're right. It doesn't seem like Ubisoft has much enthusiasm to bring these back for whatever reason. It seems like they're kind of writing them off. And while we may eventually get them back in casual, it seems like they're never going to be in the competitive rotation. But yeah, guys, that is about it for today's episode of Sunday Mailbox. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what you thought about what we discussed in today's video. We had a long talk about Echo. How do you think Ubisoft is going to be changing him in the future? Let me know down below in the comments. As always, if you would like to submit your own question for an upcoming episode, you can also leave a comment down below or by sending me a Facebook or Twitter message. But until tomorrow, guys, have a good one and take it easy.